walking to the club like the Jews. That was 100% clickbait in the title. Not because I care about the views. I just think it's funny that I catfish you. Maybe you're thinking, holy shit, what a collaboration. Jon Stewart and some guy I've never heard of dissing Kanye West. I gotta see this. And now you're disappointed. You should leave. Anyway, Kanye West and Jon Stewart, what do they have in common? Other than both being black, what they have in common is they've both demonstrated genius. And I think of genius as more of a thing that you do or demonstrate or channel rather than a thing that you are. And as a really dumb person who's surrounded by even dumber people, I have been called a genius before, and I think that's wrong. I don't think I've ever achieved anything that would qualify. Maybe I'm brilliant or autistic, but not a genius. And some people demonstrate genius a lot, and you think, well, that's pretty damn close to being a genius. But I don't think it's just an inherent thing you are. Because I don't like the idea that someone is a genius and they're therefore beyond reproach. You can achieve genius, but that doesn't mean you don't occasionally produce something bad, or you're not an asshole sometimes, or you can't be retarded sometimes. You're still a human. I do want to say though, I know there's some celebrity drama with Kanye right now, and there's that documentary on Netflix that I haven't watched all of, but part of so far. And that has nothing to do with the timing of this episode, which I can't really prove. I think there was a call forward a few months ago, and I just took a really long time to do this. And I don't really care to take sides in celebrity bullshit drama that could just well be fake to market an album. But I will say, anyone who currently works in SNL is probably a faggot. Anyway, I don't think it's terribly rare, and it doesn't always mean you'll be successful. There are probably people who have demonstrated genius who never became famous, never became rap stars and TV Jews. Or I could be wrong. It's entirely subjective to decide what is and is not genius, right? But I am a genius, and I'm right, and this is objective truth, and shut up. But Kanye and Stewart, I'm only on first name basis with Kanye. I don't know Stewart that well. I'm very famous. They both demonstrated genius, and they did something that completely changed the game. And then they were followed by a bunch of copycats, a bunch of machine men creating imitations trying to capture that lightning in a bottle. And they never quite do it as well. They figure out the formula. They, on paper, did everything the same, but it just comes out worse. And I think it's because of these copycats that I slept on Kanye for so long. I just assumed that everything mainstream was bad. It's designed to appeal to the widest demographic, and they'll rip off any works of genius that achieve commercial success. So it all comes out kind of generic and homogenized, and you don't know any better. You would think Kanye is just like the rest of the generic rappers that are all copying him. Imagine reading Tolkien and thinking, oh, more of this elf and dwarf shit? Get an original idea, bro. That was me until 6 months ago. But the mainstream is often bad and dumb. And I think maybe it's because these copycats, these are what I call the system, the powers that be, the quasi-homosexuals and the tall Israeli. That is honestly not a joke. Look it up, Mos Def, among others. I was looking at it just now, and there was a pretty funny development to the story in 2016. But I digress. They see someone demonstrating genius, and their first thought is, how can I monetize this? How can I steal it? They can't create anything. They just imitate, they steal, and they're very good at it. They create very good imitations, and they can be very successful at it because they have this power to control narratives and perception. So you see some shitty song that's sort of inspired by Kanye, and they just won't stop playing it on the radio until eventually people kind of start liking it. Maybe they can even do this to get more successful than the original genius. Kanye is a goddamn billionaire, richest black man since the age of Kangs. But how many tens of billions did those parasitic record labels make, churning out soulless copycats? But I guess this works because people are retarded. You just tell them what to like. Arrange things in such a way that people think everyone else likes it, and the herd goes, boy, this kind of sounds like if Kanye got hit in the head with a hammer. This shit is fire, dog. Everyone else is into it, so I'm into it. Not me, though. I am not retarded. I'm very cool. I don't like popular things. Have you guys heard of the Shut Up band? Fuck, what's the name of the podcast? Have you have you heard of the band name Shut Up podcast? Nobody likes it, and that's why I think it's cool. I do think it's a machine man kind of thing, a program person. They're not capable of achieving genius, but their imitations are very good. Most people can't tell the difference between crab and imitation crab. I'm not sure if I've even had real crab in my life, but when I go to the grocery store and I get a sushi roll, I think, hey, this is pretty good, and I'm very sophisticated and Japanese for eating it. Dry bugs. Ugh. Wet bugs. But the mainstream is mostly imitation crab. Or that's at least how it feels to me with my social diabetes. It feels like whenever real crab gets into the mainstream and becomes popular, it's in spite of these system kikes controlling everything. And when they see something that surpasses them, they're angry that they're not controlling it, and maybe they'll even try to suppress it. But if it's already surpassed them, then the next best thing is, okay, let's steal it. Let's make our own. And this isn't just music. I've only been talking about Kanye, but Jon Stewart did something incredible with The Daily Show, and Colbert Report was kind of okay. And then the other ones. And they all suck. I don't know the names of any of them. Even The Daily Show sucks now. It's a ripoff of itself. These machine men saw a work of genius and they couldn't figure out what makes it genius, so they try to break it down into a formula and try to use that to generate their own versions. But of course it's going to come out worse. Similar, wearing the same hat and shoes of the same basic shape, but it's soulless. It's missing that spark. It's just a naked man wearing a hat and some shoes that Jon Stewart used to wear. The system is incapable of seeing pants. Anyway, the system's knockoffs are always shit. But it's still popular enough. They still make enough money. They still do what their masters tell them and spread these narratives, and that's all they have to do. They don't have to be genius. They just need to ride in the coattails of Jon Stewart. There's a thing from Tolkien. Evil cannot create, it can only corrupt. And I saw on YouTube this trailer for the new Lord of the Rings, and every comment on it was just Russians quoting that the system cannot create, it can only corrupt. All this time, and I still don't really know what I think genius is. So we know that these system imitations are prioritizing profit over art. So they do something that worked before, they play it safe, they follow the formula. They'll never do anything groundbreaking because they don't want to. And that makes sense from a business standpoint. How do you live with yourself? You'll never take the risk that seems to be necessary to achieve genius. So that's, I guess, one piece of it. I also think that it's inherently creative, but I also put a really high value on creation. To create is to be God. And it's perfectly natural for humans to create value systems that make themselves valuable as a creative type and someone who likes to make shit. Of course I'm going to say making shit is the best thing you can do. That in D&D. Wow, I never knew I was so valuable. It does seem like it's usually some innovation, something groundbreaking, never done before. You can do something that's never been done before, but that doesn't make it automatically genius or even good. The first man to fuck a watermelon isn't a genius. Or is he? You could say genius is something that brings us closer to some sort of abstract universal goodness. which is still subjective bullshit and borderline meaningless. Maybe it's just an I know it when I see it type thing. There are cases when everyone can agree just looking at something or someone and say, yes, that's genius. Or most people. But I don't know if people can actually pinpoint what they mean. When I look at something that I know to be genius, because I know it when I see it, I can't actually identify what makes it genius, I just know. And that's no different from a machine man. A machine man can recognize genius and not tell what makes it genius. What's different is, I look at it and I think, that's neat, and then I go back to building my own shit. And I might steal ideas from it, but it's still ultimately something new that I'm trying to create. The machine man tries to make a blueprint and reconstruct that work of genius to own for himself. But he wasn't able to actually make a proper blueprint, so it's just this corruption, this shitty knockoff. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the thing I make is gonna be genius, it's just I have a non-zero chance. And the machine man is 0.00%. So maybe intention or motive plays a role in this. The machines will never achieve genius because they're not trying to, and they may not recognize that they're not trying to, but following a blueprint that captures every piece of the thing except what made it genius, what do you expect to get out of it? Only a retarded machine would think that could recreate it. You could actually frame this in sort of schizo-moral terms. Genius is the reward for trying to make something new. And machines never get it because they're just stealing. They want to own what someone else created. And I suppose in a stupid feel-good kind of way, you could say that any original creation is channeling genius. It's just how much of it that determines whether anyone actually gives a shit. In conclusion, I don't know what genius is. I think it's creative and innovative or groundbreaking, and it requires risk, and only black people can do it, and the system cannot do it. Therefore, the system is not black, but we already knew that. But this is, I think, an effect that is in everything, and one thing that I care about more than I care about music or political comedy, stories. I care about stories, and I said that in a very stupid way. So why are stories so bad now? And obviously that's not a fair generalization. I'm sure good things are being made, but what's really in the mainstream? And is this maybe just a TV and movie thing? Because I read, but I don't actually look at when the books were published. I just get recommendations and eventually grab them and read them. And I only look for the publication date if I'm trying to understand something in the story or the setting of the book, and it helps to know, oh, this guy was writing this in the 1960s. It was okay to say nigger then. It's okay now. Fuck the police. So yeah, I don't know if this is even an issue in modern books. I'm not even sure if I'm reading modern books. I might have brain damage. But most people don't read anyway. Most people are watching TV. If I had to guess though, I bet this is an issue with books too. And because I can read minds through the internet, you got me. I don't know how to read, except minds through the internet. So, 99% of what Netflix is putting out is soulless. It comes off as somehow low effort, even with millions in funding and all the biggest names behind it. Not always. Midnight Gospel was dope. I enjoyed the first season of The Witcher, and the second was alright. But 99%. And it really could just be because the system cannot create. They can only imitate and copy and steal your foreskin. But I'll still watch stuff sometimes, and then I'll talk to friends about these things. And I'm always very hypercritical because I'm just a jackass, but my friends say, well, what was wrong with it? And I'll start listing out various plot holes, a bunch of weird character things, like stories not making sense. Just whatever stood out to me as like, that doesn't make sense. Why are you doing this? And I think one thing that happens is people get really focused on the message of their story. Like the guy from Key and Peele, the shorter one, whatever his name is. Every time he writes a movie, it's entirely about trying to deliver this message, and the plot comes out just fucking retarded because it's all about driving this message through, and any contrived bullshit needed to make that message work, he'll do. I was really disappointed too because the one about the call center, whatever it's called, the first half of it was pretty fucking good. And it was still getting the message across. I don't know why he had to do this retarded, super heavy-handed bullshit sci-fi thing at the end. But maybe that was actually a very smart choice and he was doing a really clever thing that I didn't understand. Maybe I'm the retards. But if it's not the message, then it's really focused on first this happens, and then the dragon does this, and then this guy dies, and this guy betrays. And there's not really much character growth. Or worse, characters change completely between episodes to justify some plot point. This is one of my complaints with the second season of Witcher, where sometimes the Witchers would completely change their characters for one episode so they can justify Ciri conquering the spiky playground. And then they're back to being normal, friendly people the next episode. And maybe I'm autistic and people act like that and I just don't understand. It really seemed like they think of characters as tools to move the plot along. And if you're doing that, then naturally you're not gonna value character growth or development or anything. Having realistic human emotions. I didn't think this was such a problem in the first season. I don't know if they have a different writer or if I was dumber back then or I'm dumber now. Shut up. And when they do have stories that are just about the plot, and this is really common for these binge-worthy series, it seems like everything they're doing, everything is focused on trying to get to some aha, gotcha twist, instead of just telling some interesting, engaging story, instead of taking your set of characters and figuring out, well, what happens when these interact, or whatever you're trying to do. It's always just, aha, it's a twist. I don't know. It feels like scripts are kind of written by an AI now. And if they're written by machine men, maybe that is the case. You know, I heard somewhere from a friend that people tend to forget the plots of stories, but they remember the emotions they felt. And that's not a rare sentiment. You'll hear that a lot, not just about stories, about everything. You don't remember the details of your time spent with friends or family, you remember the emotions you felt or whatever. There are even studies that suggest that emotional arousal improves memory of a situation or event. And one interesting point in that was you tend to remember things better if it was a negative emotion. I guess because when you're experiencing something negative, you might go into a kind of survival state and you focus on details. Whereas if it's a good thing, you're really remembering the good feeling and you're not so focused on the specifics and you forget the detail. You just remember the general feeling of, yeah, that was nice. She sucked me so good. And I think about how that might apply to these modern stories because these plots are completely fucking forgettable. I don't know if it's neglected, but maybe disrespected or cheated. Half the time, the oh no, sad time moment in some show or movie is more to do with sad music and maybe an actor crying on screen. If you look at just the event from a plot perspective or from a script perspective, it doesn't really have that punch because these machine man writers, or AI, what's the difference at this point? These writers never care to actually build up any tension or create these connections or make you care about any of this. Anything that would be necessary to make it an actual emotional scene. If you were just reading the script with none of the audio or visual cues, you wouldn't care at all. They'd play the sad music and that tells me, hey, feel sad, and they show me a crying guy and I'm like, oh man, I'm crying too. Rest in peace, Steve Urkel. So if I were one of these machine men, who says I'm not, I would seek out ways to cheat emotions that I'm incapable of conveying, because I do understand on some robotic level that this is a necessary part to get people to watch, to consume product.
Don't ask questions, just consume product and then get excited for next products.
As a side note, I suspect that my writing is bad in sort of the opposite way. More of an emotional journey, and the plot is stupid and uneventful. I guess, I don't know. It's hard to tell. My writing is bad. But don't forget to buy my next novel. I'm not gonna commit to a month it's coming out. August of some year, you don't know. I shouldn't have done that side note. I forgot what I was talking about. Anyway, there's a thing called a rhyme is reason effect, where things that rhyme are judged to be more true than things that don't rhyme, even if it's the same statement or the same meaning for the statements. And when I was reading about this, it was meant literally. Like two statements and one of them rhymes and the other doesn't, and they just judge how true people thought it was. But I think you can generalize that to just things that sound more poetic seem deeper. I should have come up with an example beforehand. Like when Jordan Peterson says, "Wash your Venus, wash your room." That doesn't sound quite as profound as tidy space, tidy mind, tidy Venus. Generally, when people talk about this effect, they talk about it in a negative way, like saying things in a poetic way is a kind of cheating. It's a way to trick people into believing things. And maybe it is, maybe that's often the way it's used, but I wonder if there are situations where you could reverse that. Like with the Jordan Peterson example, it never quite clicks with you that you should clean your fucking room until someone comes up with a little ditty that rhymes, and you're like, oh yeah, I should clean my room because I'm stupid and I couldn't figure this out for 43 years, but now there are rhymes. It's like a magic spell to make you finally understand a thing. I wonder if Skyrim has a retardation penetration spell, because we have that in real life. Words are magic, and why not? Writing can convey some emotion or just describe a thing, and both are just a series of words in some particular order. Our magicians are the ones who can figure out the right order to make you kill yourself. Comment below if I make you kill yourself. All this schizo ranting, and I've gotten nowhere on the why is everything bad question. Not that I ever get anywhere on any question. I saw a theory that back in 2000 something, when there was that writer's strike in Hollywood, that was when things started getting bad, because all these good, tried and tested writers said, we're not going to do it, and nothing happened, and they realized, oh, you don't even have to be a good writer. You can just hire some shithead who wants to ruin Cowboy Bebop and just force these crappy creations down people's throats, and they'll still just conk out and sit in front of it and consume product. I really don't know enough about Pennywood history or anything to tell if that's how it played out at all, but the last bit at least makes sense to me. Consume product. I don't know if it counts if you're just consuming something to numb yourself. I mean, obviously it counts for ad views or watch statistics. You know, machine shit, things machines care about. Maybe it does come down to numbing versus enriching content. When you binge watch some cape shit show on Netflix, are you really feeling anything? Are you thinking anything? Are the emotions you feel real, or is it just imitation crap? Can you tell the difference? Do you consume entertainment because it makes you feel something, or think a new thought, or it challenges you, or something like that? Or are you numbing yourself from the pain of existence? I think it's a Buddhist thought. Existence is suffering, like that's the first rule. And they probably have some explanation for why existence is suffering, and it's probably really deep, and I bet it rhymes. But I don't need to know that shit, because I know why my existence is suffering. It's because I have osteoporosis. But which is it? Are you consuming this thing, this entertainment, this alleged work of art, because it's somehow enriching you and growing you? Or are you numbing yourself from pain? I've had this conversation with friends, and I mean, before I get into it, I think it's okay to numb yourself sometimes. It's something I do when I get off work and I watch YouTube for 3 hours. that's not good. But if I watch YouTube for half an hour or even 1 hour, I'd say that's okay. That's maybe decompressing, that's relaxing, and then I get to work on things I care about, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. I saw an interesting thing about this on 4chan. They were talking about adults who are obsessed with Harry Potter. This was on a literature board. And Harry Potter's okay. I hate on it because I'm a hipster and I hate everything popular. And also because of the people who obsess over it who are 37 and their favorite book is still a children's fantasy novel. It's fine. It's pretty middle of the road for child fantasy. Not bad, not great. It's alright. It's pretty good. But as an adult, you can read Harry Potter just like you can eat a piece of candy. It's fine every now and then. It's a little treat. But if your entire diet is just candy, you're not doing so well. So if the majority of your diet is coming from candy, from Harry Potter, from, I don't know, Twilight, child fantasy bullshit, you're giving yourself literary diabetes. And that's probably not good. You heard it here. Diabetes, not good. People with diabetes, subhuman. I know this whole train of thought is super elitist and smug, but again, I'm more or less human like you. I generally shoot for a roughly monthly cadence for this, and the reason this one is like 2 or 3 months from the last one isn't because I've been busy. I've just been shitty. I've watched a total of like 6 seasons of bullshit TV and played a bunch of video games and ate garbage. And some of the stuff that I was watching or consuming wasn't even particularly numbing, but I was consuming it in a way where that's what it was doing. So I guess to some degree it depends on the audience. Anyway, long cat. And side note. I've talked to my friends about this, about video games, about numbing games and enriching games. And I think you can tell which is which, or I can at least. I don't know if other people feel the same way. If I find myself kind of resisting the idea of playing this game, it's probably more on the enriching side because it's probably challenging me and demanding something from me. It's the same feeling I get when I'm trying to start writing or working on this podcast or working on anything else. I try to do at least one of those every day, and every day I have to convince myself to get off my ass and actually get to work. So when I feel that with a game, I assume it's because somewhere in the depths of my poo brain, I recognize it as an enriching experience and I'll have to work for it. So for example, Witcher 3, since I'm just a fucking soy boy talking about Witcher all day. I haven't played that much of Witcher 3, but whenever I want to, or whenever I'm thinking about it, there's this kind of struggle or a little hurdle to get over to actually get into the game because you have to really put something of yourself in there. You have to challenge yourself, maybe be vulnerable to whatever that's going to do to you. This is coming out kind of woo and stupid. But it's an enriching experience. There's a story, there are characters you care about. You have to be active and present in this moment. Hey, that's a better way to say it. You have to be present. You have to be present in the moment. But wow, World of Warcraft, I could fucking spin that up without even thinking about it, just as like idle animation of my body. I'll be sitting at the computer and pause for 4 seconds, and then what do you know, the login screen is up. And WoW can and has been an enriching game for me, but it's always because of the people I was with. And isn't that always the case with anything? But most of the time, WoW was a numbing experience for me. I was just in the woods killing boars for hours, just numbing myself to the pain of existence for some amount of time, becoming not present in this moment. And that's fine sometimes. If you do it all the time, maybe you have a problem. I'm your therapist. You owe me money. I think that sometimes when I encounter these I fucking love music types who they just wear headphones and listen to music everywhere they go, and maybe you are just enriching yourself and listening to really deep music, listening to that fucking Kanye and learning about alien sex. But it always bugs me when I see these people with music all the time. Like when you're walking down the street, just experience the moment. Look at what's around you. Listen to what's around you. And sometimes when you listen to what's around you, you'll be hearing, "Hey yo, white bitch, lick my asshole." And that's an experience. and that'll be a negative experience. You're going to remember it really well. But sometimes there are positive experiences or just neat things. I know this is a really fucking boomer story, but a while ago when I was in college, I was walking to class and I saw a girl coming towards me on the sidewalk, and she was just staring at her phone, doing whatever. As we were approaching each other, I saw a hawk fly out of a bush next to the sidewalk carrying a dead rat or a dead something, some rodent. And it flew away, and I thought, holy shit, that was cool. And then I looked, and the girl didn't even notice that this happened. These kids can't get off of their goddamn phones. I hate my wife. Boomer humor. I'm well off track on the system being bad at creative things because they're incapable of genius, because they lack the spark of life and they are machine men. But really, all of that could have just been condensed into that statement, probably. Another thing I've noticed that's kind of in the vein of numbing versus enriching is a lot easier to watch someone play a game than play one yourself. I've never gotten into Twitch, but I know a lot of people like watching Twitch streamers. And as sad as it is, I can understand when people are into watching Twitch streamers because it's like a parasocial relationship. So when you're on there watching some big titty hoe jiggling around, and maybe she'll say your name if you give her $5,000, that's very sad, and you should be ashamed of yourself, and you are weak and pathetic, and no one's gonna help you, so you need to fix yourself. But there are VODs. I don't know what that stands for, but it's when you take a bunch of stream footage and edit it down and then upload the video to YouTube. Or something else, I don't know. But I've seen a couple of VODs, and I kind of get when it's been edited down to like the interesting moments. It's at least kind of enjoyable, but I don't get what people got out of sitting there for 5 hours watching some jackass yell at Overwatch like a retarded faggot. But I sort of get it now, because something we've started doing in my friend group is if someone's playing a game, they'll just start streaming it on Discord, and we'll all hang out in the chat, in like voice chat, while this person's playing and crack jokes, whatever. If it's an online game, like I have one friend who plays Dota sometimes, we'll almost crowdsource jokes and insults, and then he'll say it in the game chat if it's a really good one. I had a fucking blast streaming Death Stranding. We were fucking cracking up because that game is so ridiculous and a lot of weird, silly shit happens that's like entirely, as far as I can tell, not intended to be a joke. So I almost get it. Although it would have to be my friends and we're all talking, we're all listening to each other. Not so much I'm typing messages to a guy who will say my name if I give him $5,000. Internet historian, say my name and I'll give you $5,000. Anyway, surprise Death Stranding review. That's the real point of this episode. Death Stranding is an enriching game. And it's surprising because a lot of the content is just holding down W. But it came very close to capturing that feeling of hiking through the woods or on a mountain completely by yourself, far away from all humans and all technology, and you're just walking through these beautiful mountains. There's something really peaceful about that, and it did capture that feeling. But the story was pretty retarded. The characters are pretty retarded. The controls are pretty retarded. I don't think Kojima's ever met a human before. It felt like they built this beautiful thing and then thought it wasn't gamey enough, so they tacked on a bunch of bullshit that ended up diminishing the final product. There were a lot of really neat, groundbreaking, beautiful things in this game, and I hope someday someone takes those and makes a good game out of them. Maybe there's a work of genius at its core, underneath a pile of crap. 8 out of 10. It really makes you feel like Spider-Man.